Welcome to episode 8 of Hearth Bound, where three lifelong friends set out on a virtual quest through the pages of iconic book series, all while celebrating every monster description and mic drop moment with a shot of the sweetest mead. My name is Lou Chapman. I'm accompanied by Matt Mullen and Sean Martz, the Simon and Theodore to my Alvin. In today's episode, we're starting Chapter 4 in The Last Wish, the first book in the Witcher series. If you're just joining us around the hearth, hop on over to our latest Checkpoint episode, where I review everything that's happened in the story so far. I also just wanted to let you know up front that we tried to cover this whole chapter in one episode, but it ended up with the podcast so long that I don't even think our mothers would listen to the whole thing. So to help keep everyone's attention, we decided to split our single conversation into 2 episodes. More on that in the outro. Enough with the build-up, open up another bottle, and throw another log on the fire, because this is Hearth Bound.
Ladies and
So
gentlemen,
excited. We have it. Officer, we've had a doozy of a day.
What a chapter. What an experience. Bringing us together. We started an hour and a half ago, I think, trying to figure this out, and we finally got it. So
technical difficulties have been umpteen number of technical difficulties.
That's at least 3 years ago.
At least.
But how appropriate for this chapter, I'm just throwing it out there. We'll find out what this means, but I claim the law of surprise, and since I've done that, everything technologically that could go wrong, it just Murphy's lawed us, and everything has gone wrong that could go wrong.
So you're saying the law of surprise, Murphy lawed us.
It's Murphy's law, the law of surprise. Everything that can't go wrong will go wrong, or everything that is, it's destiny.
It was destiny.
But destiny has brought us here. To episode 8?
Is it episode 8?
This is episode 8.
No, it's not.
It is.
Episode 8.
Episode 8,
It
chapter
is?
4.
Oh my gosh.
We've done
Episode
this.
8,
Episode
Boys,
7,
we made it.
Chamber. Episode 8.
We made it.
All right, we're making
Okay, but
moves.
before we get started into the content, I just wanted to shout out, in case you hadn't heard, a podcast of 3 idiots trying to make it through a book together,
Who can't connect their own internet.
have made it on a list, including, who is also on this list, the great voice of Reading Rainbow,
Oh my gosh.
LeVar Burton. I think that's how you say his first name, right?
I hope so, or you just blew it.
I just blew up. But oh my guys,
Reading Rainbow.
the Reading Rainbow guy has a podcast. We are included in the list of podcasts with him.
Yeah, Apple
That
Podcasts.
blew my mind.
They made a list of, it's the Book Corner Lovers, or Book Lovers Corner. I'm an idiot. All right, Book Lovers Corner
Should we maybe
list.
record this shout out when we're sober?
No, I think it's better. This is more appropriate. This is why we made that list.
This is why we
This is
made
why
this
we
podcast.
This is why we shouldn't have made that list.
Yeah, but huge thanks to Apple Podcasts for shouting us out on Twitter, and huge congrats to all of the amazing podcasts that are on that. We are on a list,
A dope list.
amongst names of just amazing podcasts and amazing people.
Ink to Film. I listened to a little bit of theirs. Real big fan of that one already, and I'm only like halfway through a podcast. What was the other one I listened to? Coffee and Books. That was a good one. But I'm rambling about it. But I'm just really thankful to be a part of it. And thank you to you listeners, because I know there's a few of you out there that helped us retweet and like and make sure Apple Podcasts knew about us.
Yeah, thanks, Mom.
Yeah, thanks.
No,
Mom.
thanks to my mom.
Yeah, my
probably
mom's not on
listening to this.
Twitter.
It's always a thanks to my mom. I would not be here if it weren't for her.
I will admit, in our most recent episode 6, which is out, I do mention parents fighting, and my mom called me and was like, I don't fight with your father. And I was like, oh my Mom!
Mom, not in front of my friends. Jeez.
I was just more happy she knew how to open up a podcast app.
She's gonna hear this, and dude, she's gonna physically hurt you.
I love you, Mom.
Okay, we're
sorry.
We are 4 minutes in. We are 4 minutes in. Let's start talking about the book.
All right.
Okay, so
where did we leave off?
Like the boys said, we are on chapter 4 of The Last Wish, the first book in the the first book in the Witcher series. And as usual, this one starts off with a voice of reason that is before the chapter titled A Question of Price. So let's start with the voice of reason, right?
Did the timer restart for you guys?
Nope.
No, I'm at 4:37.
The law of surprise strikes again.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no.
All right, hold on. At 5 seconds, Lou, I want you to snap your fingers. You too, Matt. Or 5 minutes.
I don't know what 5 minutes
I'm going
is.
to clap.
Right about now.
There it is. The law of surprise strikes again.
All right. Let's jump right into it. Chapter 1, Geralt fought a Striga. Chapter 2, Geralt fought wicked banshee vampire thing. Chapter 3, Bruxer, yes. Chapter 3, what did Geralt fight?
Oh, he fought
Renfrey.
Renfrey. Oh, dude. We don't want to talk about it, though,
He
man.
got James Bond. He fell in love and then had to kill her.
The one that got away.
And that's where we left off on a ton of character development with Geralt.
And book development. I mean, the book really started to tell you that there are moral dilemmas in this story. You better be ready for them. So, Geralt, if you remember from previous episodes, gets cornered by, Yola. Yola, right? Yes, he gets cornered by Yola, and they sit down, and Geralt just kind of talks to her. And I think it was really interesting to me, because in the show, Geralt kind of is like I don't talk to anybody. I kind of just brood in the corner, and I don't open up to anybody. But in the book, Geralt has it's got to be at least 5 or 6 page one-way conversation with mute priestess.
We see a very sensitive side of Geralt.
Let's be very clear here. This is Geralt talking at Yola. This is not reciprocal. Yola is not part of this chapter except for her name's mentioned. This is a Geralt brain dump.
On to Yola.
Yeah, she's just sitting there amidst her vow of silence, listening to Geralt kind of fill in the blanks like he's talking to a tree or a brick wall. He's just
honestly
filling in the blanks of what she would reply with, and even dropping things like, are you still paying attention? Am I boring you? And she's not doing anything. She's just sitting there listening to him talk. So it's very odd.
I did get the impression that she is kind of interacting with him a little bit. There's one part where he's like, sure, you can pick up my sword. Don't touch it right there, though. It's razor sharp. And then there's another point where he doesn't say it, but I kind of got the feeling where he's like, don't look at me like that. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. I just the way the author wrote his dialogue, it seemed like she gave a look of concern. And he was like, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. But Geralt goes through and he says, one of the first things he says is, I need this conversation. And he just starts talking about everything he's gone through and all these moral dilemmas in his life. And as someone who's just kind of heard a few stories about Geralt up to this point, you kind of already know that his life's been troublesome, but you really get some detail here. One of the first things that I have noted down here is Geralt became a Witcher at a place called Kaer Morhen, which is a abandoned castle of sorts where Witchers train, or at least I think it may be one of them. He talks about Vesemir is his Witcher dad. He says he doesn't know his real mother or his real dad, but Vesemir, he calls him his dad. So I kind of have this envision of this old wise Witcher that took Geralt under his wing and showed him the ropes and stuff like that.
Yeah, I had a very, this is awkward moment, because in my notes I wrote down, Vesemir is the Witcher or Geralt's dad, and then a sentence later it's ooh, not his dad. I was like, poor guy. But yeah, this is the home of the Witchers and the birthplace of one Geralt of Rivia. This is the point in the story where I kind of wondered where Geralt's head was at, because he is the brooding character. He's off on the side. He's a man of very few but witty words. And Yola, I thought at this point, she's in his head again. So I think she's using these powers to get him to reveal and just dump all this information about Witchers, where he came from, what he remembers. And then it, builds up to the point where he's just like, you're going too far. You're going too far. He's becoming aware. I think that she's in his mind, but there's a lot of backstory on Geralt that's revealed in this Voice of Reason. Like the trial of the grasses.
Yeah, just to be clear,
funny.
this is not the literal birthplace of Geralt. This is the figurative birthplace of Geralt.
Yes.
Yes, like the rebirth place of Geralt.
Correct. He was taken here very young, and they talk about the mutations that he went under very briefly. But one thing I've noticed throughout this book is they never give you details about the mutations. They just say, "Oh, the usual mutations," and I was like, "Yeah, because that's usual, right? Like, what about that? Or like, come on, give me some details. What's happening? What mutations?"
The cool part, and as I was reading it, I couldn't help but laugh. Because we are in this year of insanity, anything is possible. And then they're talking about this trial of grasses, which is the Witcher's going under all of these things like hormones, herbs, and viral infections. I was like, that's pretty much 2020 in a nutshell. Like, it is everything that could go wrong is going wrong. And it's just modern society. So it's really relatable in this modern lens. But this is the intense trial of the Witcher kind of becoming a Witcher, but also Geralt becoming a man. So there is a lot involved with this trial.
Are you saying like a rite of passage?
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely got the Spartan rite of passage kind of, go out into the woods, do your, survive on your own kind of warrior thing.
He said, and I survived, but there were worse, a bunch of people died. And I was like, well, that seems like a pretty poor system if it kills everyone off. You want to make them strong enough to survive. You don't want to kill everyone off. So I got the vibe that Geralt's like one of the last Witchers around. He's a dying breed.
Yeah, I got that feeling too.
But also the best of the best, because you think about the Spartans, like how they, at least as they're portrayed in the movies and things like that, where they train and they're fighting each other, and kind of the runt of the litter, they are kind of brushed to the side, or they get injured enough or killed by other Spartans because they're not elite. And Geralt said that he was a very fortunate and a very unique case. He mentions his white hair was a feature of him going through these extensive wolf school or this wolf trial. That's how he got his medallion, because he ended up becoming a Witcher. But he said something about his white hair being a unique feature to him. So I was like,
surviving the trials,
like that was a side effect for him. So I was wondering if all Witchers had to have white hair, or if that was just unique to Geralt. And later in this chapter, we're going to talk about it because it comes back up again. That's kind of revealed when he goes to this party of sorts.
So basically what happens in this chapter is he brain dumps on Iola. We get some backstory. He trained at Kaer Morhen. He doesn't know his parents. He believes in the sword. He doesn't believe in the gods.
Another point that I wanted to bring out is after Geralt graduates, quote unquote, Witcher school, he talks about how like he was kind of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, like, oh, I'm a brand new knight. Like I was like have this vision of him like I'm gonna go save the world, and he kind of talks about like his first monster that he encounters was actually a gang of men that were trying to rob and rape a merchant and his daughter. And Geralt just comes upon them as it's happening, and he comes up with this clever line where it's like, I think the gang leader was like, it's time your daughter met a real man, and Geralt goes, it's time you met one too, and then like slashes these guys up, and he's kind of like, yeah, there I was the knight in shining armor, and all of a sudden he's like waiting for his reward or like some gratitude. And it describes that the merchant runs away because he just dismembered somebody, and the girl that he saved is covered in the guy's blood. So she just screams, faints, and that's it. And he's like, I did all that for that. And you just get this idea that he gets like this terrible taste or this terrible experience of helping people right away. And it ruins it for him.
Yeah. I recently saw this movie. I mean, probably 2 days ago. But Guns Akimbo, it has Daniel Radcliffe in it. Mm-hmm. There is a scene in that movie where he takes somebody out and he saves his ex-girlfriend or something like that. And he has this vision of like what happens when he kills this guy, that she just embraces him. And he goes, actually, that's what I was seeing when I was bleeding out. He goes, in reality, when you kill someone in front of your ex-girlfriend, she doesn't want to kiss you. She gets PTSD. So Geralt... I thought this was a very interesting passage because of that idea, because there's this different take, as there have been different takes with these fairy tale nods in all these chapters what chivalry is with knights. So Geralt thought that that was the right thing to do, and it was the right thing to do, is to save her and save him, but there was no reward there. So usually there's the knight coming to the rescue of a damsel in distress, and then there's this reality being drawn for Geralt that that is not anything like the real world. And that is a paralleled really heavy to like people in college. They're told what the real world's going to be like, and then they get dropped in it, and it's not the real world at all. So I thought that was so cool how he got, all these ambitions, his bright-eyed, bushy-tail attitude immediately shot down. Like reality hit him like a brick wall. Like you can't just slaughter people in front of people and think that they're going to embrace you like our hero, Like, it was bad.
Following up on that, I think that's a really interesting point, and it's a really interesting dichotomy compared to the last chapter, where that's exactly what happened. He saved an entire town from massacre by killing 7 dudes, or 6 dudes and a chick, and the entire town is like, you need to get the frick out of here. We don't want you back. You butchered people here. You are the butcher of Blaviken. And
Still
Geralt's
a
like,
cool name.
I saved your town.
Yeah.
And they're like, get out of here. Just get. And he's like, I saved your town. I killed someone I loved to save your town. I fell in love with this chick, and I had to kill her to save your town. You're welcome. I just gave up a piece of my heart to save all of you, and you have nothing.
And you're kicking me out.
It's really heavy, and he even goes into listing, and we have like way more monsters for our monster list. But he's like,
"Oh, I'm so excited!
I've saved people from manticores. These I don't even know
vipers.
Yeah, vipers.
Yeah, he goes
seriously like
list.
A list of 20 monsters, and he goes, I've done all these things for people, and I'm on. He kind of sounded like when somebody's really drunk and they're like, I just love you. Yeah. And they just start talking about themselves. They're just like, I've been so good to people, and I've killed so many monsters. Why doesn't anybody love me? And he's just laying it on thick, and he's totally underappreciated. And Yola, again, you have to remember the entire time, Yola is not responding. It's just Geralt.
Yeah, Yola's just of silence.
Not verbally, but there's a lot that can be said with just your eyes or like your facial features. I had imagined that she's giving him some very curious looks.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
One of the other things I wanted to point out before we moved on was the Witcher code is entirely made up by Geralt.
Which means Sean is right. Sean is right.
Sean was right.
Yeah, I wrote that in. I was like, Sean's right, ...
Take note of that, viewers or listeners. I'm rarely right.
Yeah, so there is a code, but he said that it's a code that is completely his own design. Like, there is a Witcher code, but he kind of does his own thing. And if he doesn't agree with it, he's going to put a stop to it. And he justifies all of his actions that way, which is cool. But at this point, we hit a vocab word, weir, W-E-I-R. It's a low dam built across a river to raise the level of water upstream to regulate its flow. And this is how Geralt is kind of connecting himself. He's using this metaphor to describe himself when talking about slaying all these monsters. He's like, at any time, I am this weir of, man, I could die, I could anything, all these monsters, and I risked so much for people. And, at any moment, I could just give out. Then what? So then he starts revealing, and this is when I started asking, okay, is Yola in Geralt's head or what? Because he starting to rattle off unrelated things, like the Feast of Belatin, rattles off this thing about a child, and then he says something about Yennefer, and then he kind of snaps out of it that he didn't want to go back to Sintra was one of the last things that he said. So that's when the spider sense went off for me, like, okay, this next section might have to do with Geralt in Sintra, which it is.
Yep.
Yeah, he recoils from Yola there when she tries to touch him and comfort him. That's the vibe that I got. And he talks about Sintra, and he's like, why would I ever have done what I did there? And then we move on to the next section, which is a question.
Hold on. Before he does, we do need to point out he has a memory, and he goes, actually, I was just thinking about Sintra and the time I was there. Mm-hmm. If my calculations are correct, that child should be born by now. So we kind of come to the realization that this is really
been born in May. Yeah.
Yeah. So we come to the realization that these two stories, the Voice of Reason and the flashbacks, are actually getting
closer.
I mean, we don't know if they've been getting closer, but they are very close, so 9 or so months.
Yeah.
But yeah, he mentions that the child in Sintra from this event that he was at should be born by now. So then that's the flashback we get to. And we start with part 1 of A Question of Price. And I love the opening line here.
Yes.
Hold on. What does a question of price mean to you? When you read A Question of Price, what did you think?
I thought of like, it doesn't matter how much it costs, but that's the only question remaining. So like, if two parties agreed to do something or exchange something, it's only now a question of price.
Yeah.
And Matt, what did you
I
think?
kind of thought, and I have to admit, I did know what happened in this chapter, but of the things that did happen, because I watched the Netflix show, the way that it kind of pans out in the book is kind of different. So going into this chapter, I thought a question of price was, what is it going to take? What do I have to pay you to do something? Or as if somebody came up to your house and is like, I really love your house. How much do you want for it? And it's a very odd question, but then it just becomes a question of price. How much money do I have to give you for you to give me your house? So those are the kind of things that went through my mind, at least.
So the idea there, Matt, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea is that everyone has their price. It's just a matter of what it is.
You'll do it, but how much? Really, if I have suitcases of money, how much is it going to take to get you?
Absolutely.
How many suitcases do I need?
Is that what you thought it was too, Sean?
What do you think?
No, that's exactly what I thought. I thought a question of price was, everyone has their price. It's just a matter of what it is, right? Like, what's it worth to you, and how can I make it worth your while? Again, because we went back to that code. The previous chapter talked about what his code was and how he made that up and how he tries to stick to it. So what is his price? What is the price for Geralt of Rivia?
Yeah.
And so to give the reader just a little bit of background on this, the question of price is broken up into 3 sections. We're going to try and get through all 3 of them in this episode. But
it's going to be difficult.
Long but worth it.
Section...
Wink.
Oh God! And the day WAP came out.
Can I say that's what she said? Is that too much?
That's what Cardi B said.
That's what Cardi B said.
Womp.
That's nice.
Womp womp.
So A Question of Price starts off really interesting with a knife
Is
to
interesting
Geralt's
a
throat.
drinking word?
Interesting is a drinking
John, you've
word.
said it so many times. I've winked at you every time, but you haven't.
So many times. Have you?
It's already new drink time for 21 minutes. Christ.
All right. So it starts really interesting with a knife to Geralt's throat, but you just find out that he's getting a bath and he's getting a shave. Oh. And you learn that he's getting all dolled up for a feast or a celebration that he has been invited to by Queen Calanthe of Cintra.
Have you ever gotten the close neck shave like that? Have you ever been leaned back and gotten the close neck shave by somebody else?
Nope.
You haven't?
But I will say that I was on a roller coaster of emotions from the beginning. I'm like, these Voice of Reason chapters always drag us into something crazy. And then I was like, oh, okay, we're cool. We're cool.
We're cool.
No worries.
We're cool.
He's all right.
Okay, he's getting a bath.
It was unpleasant. And I'm just
really?
gonna leave. Yeah, it didn't feel
He
good.
hasn't been back since. Look at that beard.
Yeah, look at the beard.
Yeah.
I haven't shaved in almost a year. Okay, keep going, Lou. Sorry.
Okay. So we learn he's getting all dolled up here by Queen Calanthe of Cintra, and he's getting put into a disguise by one of her castellans called Haxo, and he's going to be playing a character, not playing, he's going to be impersonating someone called Ravix of Forhorn, and he's going to be kind of chaperoning a coming-of-age party or a betrothal party for the princess of Cintra, Prevetta, who has turned 15 years old. So naturally in these times, suitors from all across the kingdom come to meet Prevetta and try to win her over, or at least her mom over, so that they can marry her. And Geralt's kind of like, why am I here? Like, I'm a witcher. I kill monsters. I have no business in a fancy ballroom where people are going to be fighting over who gets to take the princess home. And I kind of agreed with him. I was like, this makes no sense. Where is this going? But we do find out from the castellan that there is a monster in the castle somewhere. A monster that's been sneaking around at night and making noises in the chambers and stuff like that. So he kind of teases that there's something more here, the castellan does, but that's all he knows, and that's all he can tell. Yes, exactly. But one of the things before we moved on, because I don't know if you guys had anything else on this one, it's kind of short, But I just had a quick little note that Geralt specifically says that he's surprised that the queen had invited him. And the castellan here, Haxo, says, you better stop being surprised. If the queen asks you to jump, you just say how high, kind of a mentality. Yeah. And just in the last chapter, Geralt said that he was no longer going to be surprised when entering Strigabor's tower as well. So I was like, ooh, Geralt, are we finally learning that as a Witcher, you cannot be surprised by anything anymore?
Do you think this happened before or after the Strigobor incident?
That was my note. I did not know where in the timeline this stood, and I was assuming, which is never good, that it happened before because there's a lot that Geralt is surprised by in this, and it is with Strigobor that he solemnly swears that he will never be surprised again, that nothing will surprise him.
So that means that Blaviken happened between this current chapter and Voice of Reason.
Yes.
I want to say after, just because as we get into the latter sections of this chapter, we find out that his reputation precedes him.
Ah, yes. That's a good point, too.
So that was the impression that I got. So it could be either, I think. But one note that I had was I had a vocab word. The barber was shaving him, and then afterwards he wiped the Witcher's face with a piece of linen soaked in a tincture of angelic. Gracias, Siri.
Spanish Siri.
No, gracias.
El cancel, okay. Siri.
Awkward.
I'm keeping that in.
That's perfect. My Siri went off in Espanol, but he says that the butcher was wiping the Witcher's face. The barber, not the butcher. The barber. Woo! I've had a couple drinks. I'm sorry.
I can't wait to clip that either.
Oh, goodness. Right. The barber was wiping the Witcher's face with a piece of linen soaked in a tincture of angelica. And a tincture is just another word for a mixture. It's
I literally thought it was like a context like potion. I didn't even think it was a vocab word when I heard it.
Yeah, I blew right past that. I pulled a Lou. I just read it and blew right past it. I was like, I'm assuming that smells good.
I knew exactly what it meant when I read it. I knew exactly what it meant, but I would never use the word tincture. So it was curious to me. That's all.
Yeah. So
that's my only note for the chapter.
This Haxo guy, there's something else that happens in this chapter. He's kind of humoring Geralt because Geralt wants to know why the heck he's there, as Lou mentioned. And he's not giving him a lot of information, this Haxo character, which his name alone, I don't know if you guys caught this, Haxo, Haxo, I thought was an anagram for hoax. And the word hoax actually means humorous or malicious deception. So I thought that this guy was being dishonest immediately, because why would he give Geralt any information if he was ultimately trying to lead him in the wrong direction? He just wants him to get where he's supposed to be. That's his job. And Geralt is asking him why. So he's giving him a little bit of information, but not very clear. It's very vague. So he says, the queen, she needs an alliance with the Skillage, who apparently nobody... Skillage, sorry, drink. Who apparently nobody messes with. Nobody's messed with them in a long time. They're just the baddest of the bad. So she's trying to create an alliance by marrying off her daughter to someone from this place. And Geralt's like, okay, but still, what does that have to do with me? He goes, Geralt, you asked me why you're here, and I'm telling you information, and you're saying it's not useful. So what do you want from me? And he's just kind of brushing Geralt off. So there's this uneasiness because if he's there for a monster, we don't know what the monster is other than that it's in the castle. So that's kind of bothersome because if a monster's realistically in the castle, you're expecting there to be an uproar, that everyone's going to be looking for it, but they're not.
Or like not going to a party.
Right. Why is he getting dressed up if he's going to kill something? He smells good. He's got babyface Geralt going for him, like he's looking good.
Yeah.
Why am I here?
And they even mentioned that they took his swords because there are no weapons where he's going.
Yeah.
So like this is not Geralt up in the Striga Tower waiting and taking his potions, getting ready to fight a monster.
This is
So
the cleanest
obviously,
version
this
of
all
Geralt
stinks.
of the entire book.
This all stinks of no, Geralt shouldn't be here.
It
So
stinks
then,
good.
if you guys are good,
It stinks real good.
My only thought as we get into section 2 here is when they were talking about a monster in the castle. I definitely thought of the basilisk from Harry Potter.
Heck yeah,
And
man.
I thought of this castle with everybody going around just scared out of their mind, afraid to walk around every corner, that they were going to see something they didn't want to see and something bad was going to happen.
And then they'd freeze because they looked it in the eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody?
because how do you not?
Yeah, it's very very Medusa.
Yes, very.
I get the impression that everyone in the castle was scared. And then they just completely left turned me. And we go into a party and everybody's having a good time.
Having a grand old time. Specifically, if you guys don't mind, Kukudak? I don't know.
Is that how they say
don't
it
know
in
if
the audiobook?
Kukudak is how I wrote it.
Kudak.
And that's his nickname. That's not even his real name, because I don't even know what this guy's real name is, because he is the life of the party. He makes animal noises.
He's the
and
guy.
he's like everybody's biggest fan.
Yeah, he makes one and everyone's like, whoa, whoa. And then they just applaud him like, another.
Yeah, so this guy is the Baron. Okay, hold on. I'm going to try and say this. He is the Baron Elmabert of Tig.
You definitely
His
got a
name is
drink.
Elmabert. All right, fair
Nailed
enough.
it.
Anyway, he makes awesome animal noises, so his nickname is Kudkuduk.
Kukudak.
It's pretty cool.
I think it's Kukudak.
Kudkuduk!
That's pretty cool.
So that's how I read that every time was Kudkuduk!
So, going into this a little bit deeper, we find out that as what was his name? Hexo said that they're having a party to betroth or find the betrothed of Princess Purveta. So all of these suitors are coming in from all over the kingdom, and Kukuduct is there. A whole like host of a cup, like 2 or 3 dozen guys from Skellige come. And then from another place, all sorts of all over the place. Everyone's coming up to show up.
Kind of like the scene in Brave when all those Scottish clans come in. They're like, hey, I want to marry your daughter.
Yes.
And they're like,
Yeah,
Yes.
they have a bunch of Gaelic names here. There's Eis Tursech. It's great. I that's exactly what I thought of, Matt. I know where you're going with that, and I loved it.
It's a great movie.
So then we find out that Geralt is going to be sitting next to Queen Calanthe on her right in the place of honor. And kind of skipping ahead a little bit, everyone starts eating, everyone's having a good time, and it's only until there's enough murmur and enough noise in the room that Queen Calanthe finally talks to Geralt for the first time and kind of says, well, welcome here. I'm glad we can get through some formalities, but now we're through the formalities. I want to talk to you about why you're here. And he's kind of like, well, I have a feeling I know why I'm here. And she goes, oh, really? You do? So tell me why you think you're here. And Geralt goes, well, on my way here, I heard of all of these monsters that are out in your towns and out in your villages. And here I am in a ballroom in a fancy dress and all clean and shaved and everything. And I think you've hired me for the wrong reason, like plenty of other lords have done before.
Yeah.
I'm not a hired thug. I won't do what you're going to ask me to do. And Queen Calanthe's kind of taken aback.
Hold on. What does he think she's asking him to do?
To be a hired thug.
To do what, though?
To make sure that whatever alliance that she's looking for with Scalil goes through. That if any unfavorable knights or anybody, crop up or want to make their voices heard, that a quick blade from, I think the quote was, a problem that could be solved with a blade by a knight that can vanish quickly. So obviously no one knows who Geralt is, and he could just come in, cut someone in half, and then leave town.
And Geralt kind of gave a nod to the Cinderella-esque story where there was a prince that wanted him to chase after this girl who wasn't interested in him. He's like, well, I found her slipper. Go find her. He's like, get a huntsman. I'm a witcher. I kill monsters. He goes, you're just going to be like every other royal person. You just want me to go do your dirty work. And I'm not a hired thug. I'm not a hitman. I'm a witcher. Like, get with it.
And that's the first note I have for this chapter was that he says, listen, there are like so many people who are calling us to do the same freaking thing. He's like, but I've never killed a person. Like, I never kill people for money, whether it's good or bad, and I never will.
Yeah.
That was my hint that this was after
Blaviken.
Thank you. That it was A, after Blaviken, but B, I also had a note, like, the author just set us up, said it's a question of price. You just said that there's no price that I'll ever kill people for. And I was like, oh, Geralt's going to kill some people in this chapter.
He never does what he says he's going to do.
Yeah.
But there's all these people sitting around the table, and what was always like a weird thing for me in books, and I didn't realize it until I read it in this one, and I like that the author does it, is that as he's going around the room and like naming all these people, you usually question whether that's just the narrator telling you who's who, or if that's like Geralt's inner mind kind of looking around the room, and then he's kind of having his thoughts narrated out loud. So they're going from person to person saying the names and the titles, and they bring up this voivode, which is a vocab word as well, which means warlord, and it's a Slovak word, which I looked up how it's pronounced, and it's way cooler. It's Vatsvida, which is it's pretty cool. But
that was not how I had it. I had it as Wojowoda.
Whoa.
But yeah, your way is way cooler.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's just Google's way. So whatever Google says, I'm like on board. But anyway, there's like a warlord, but Geralt is going around and he's like, I know that person. And then there's this guy, and I think he is the warlord, that he continuously says his name is always hard to remember. Like that for me was really cool because it kind of says like, even though he's a witcher, he can do magic and all this stuff, he's just a guy. Like, he doesn't know everybody at the party. He's just like, yeah, and that guy, I've seen him somewhere before. Like,
That's what's his name. He's married to what's her name? They have those two kids. What's their face and what's her face?
Yeah, he's the guy with the hair and the face. So one person that they talked about specifically here that I want to bring up because he becomes important in the later parts of this chapter.
Is it the anus guy?
No.
Anus.
It's Mousesack.
Yes.
Mousesack. Mousesack is a druid, which is like a magic man from Skellige.
Sing us the song, you're the magic man.
Magic man. Yeah, and so as we keep going, as Geralt and Calanthe keep going back and forth, and Geralt toes a very fine line here. He basically tells Calanthe, like, I'm not going to do what you're about to ask me to do, so you can go blank yourself.
Pretty much.
Like, listen, Geralt, if I ever ask you to do what I'm asking you to do, you're going to do it, regardless of whether or not it's in your code or it's okay with you.
Self-censoring
the Queen
Sean.
whispered, yeah.
Right. And so there's this like really back and forth moment going on, and Calanthe's like, listen, you got it half right. I'll give you that. You're here because the marriage to Skellige needs to go smooth, but like, I don't want you just as a hired gun. It's going to get better than that. And at that moment, we find out that Mousesack is communicating with Geralt via the food on his plate.
Via texting, man.
Yeah, pretty cool.
He's like wizard texting.
Crumb texting.
Pretty cool. But
that's pretty good.
Pump the brakes a little bit because this is getting into the meat and potatoes, no pun intended, at this dinner party.
There was a pun intended, don't lie.
It's hard intention there. But there's a very interesting dialogue, and I thought that this was a very symbolic moment in this chapter where you have this queen. In this time, kings, as she had mentioned in this conversation, are the rulers. And ultimately, the whole reason anyone's there to begin with is to have a king for the kingdom. And even though she's the queen, she has the power, she has the authority. A king is a king, as they say in the text. So she separates king's authority into two categories, that kings can order people to do things, or they can buy with money, make people do things. So like this whole trinity of power, money, and control, she's kind of laying out there for Geralt as this is how kings operate. But very indirectly, she's kind of showing what a queen can do. In the same conversation, she wants to treat Geralt as a guest, but she's also letting him know where the line is. She goes, you better watch what you say, because if you said that to a king, you'd be dead.
Or on the wheel.
Or on the wheel. Yeah, like, we'll torture you, dude. But she's just saying, I'm not like them. She's trying to level with Geralt indirectly, but the way she does it is epic. She's at this table, and all these things are happening. Like, these guys at the other end of the table, they're getting super drunk, they're belligerent, and the one guy, he's this, war hero pretty much, and he's kind of showing how his army that he was with won this battle by using the bones from his chicken wings and like sauce and beer. He's like drawing it on the table and they're making a scene out of it. And he makes this comment that is weak in the center because he's, I guess, mocking the other team. He's like, weak in the center. That's only a blind and sick in the head person would let themselves, lose that advantage of being strong in the center. At the same time, though, it's the irony of the entire party. All these men are super drunk and super impressionable. So they are at their weakest point, no matter how mighty they are. And
I didn't pick up on that.
She cut off the drink. Like, she would not drink anymore. She wouldn't get drunk. She had her wits about her. She waited till everyone got loud so she could have a conversation with the Witcher. Like, everything was very calculated. So she is showing her power. She doesn't have to talk about it. She's just letting Geralt know, I have control over everybody in this room right now. And
that's why that's why you guys listen to Hearth Bound for great insight like that.
I seriously stopped reading. I'm like, she is amazing. And Geralt realizes that, like, he starts describing her like these venomously green glance that came from her. I was like, oh, I can see that in her eyes. Like, she just was dominating the conversation with Geralt.
Whoa.
She's dominating this dinner party, and she is in complete control at this point. She's smiling, but Geralt can't even describe like what the smile is for. Like, is she being sarcastic? Is she evil? Like, is she agreeing with me? And then to the party guests where she has to talk to them, she just puts on this facade like they weren't having a serious conversation. And Geralt, for the first time, I think this whole book, doesn't understand where she's at. He's being outplayed, and he's just uncomfortable by it. Like, she is just that good.
Definitely. And later in this chapter, he talks about how she's got like 1,000 smiles, a smile for anything, right? Like, that's how she rules, is with her different smiles, like her curious smile, her enigmatic smile, her interested smile. Yeah, no, Matt, I got the same thing, that she was completely in charge. Geralt was being completely outclassed. Like, listen, Witcher, I know why you think you're here, but that's not why you're here. And it gets great. And to be clear, there's 4 or 5 different serfdoms, kingdoms. I don't know what they are.
I would say serfdoms would probably be the best.
Because they were 4 or 5 different regions vying for the princess's hand. Because
they know if you marry the princess, once Queen Calanthe dies, or even before that, you will become king. Mm-hmm. And Calanthe knows that too.
Yes. A quick side note. In college, I took this class on Shakespeare, and I've been paying like extra attention to the bards. So these are the entertainers, the musicians in the room. And there is a Drogadar. He is at the head table, and he is the performer for the queen. But he is also not drinking and just picking at his food, but playing very lightly. And they mention it a few times, which to me kind of told me that he is paying attention to their conversation. He doesn't care about these idiots.
Dude, Calanthe and Geralt.
Something in Shakespeare is that all of the fools or the bards or the people who matter the least know the most about the entire story. They know exactly what's going on the entire time. So the bards are kind of in the loop. And this is kind of I think a nod to that, because he's paying attention to their conversation and he's trying to play it off like he isn't, because he's strumming along and picking at his food and this and that. But he is the only other person at the table not belligerent and drunk besides the queen and Geralt. So I thought that was like a pro move on. He's not mentioned. He's not glorified at all, but he has a lot of information. He knows who Geralt is over anyone else in that room. He knows what's up.
Like Haxo. Yeah, exactly. He's like Haxo. It's the guy who goes unknown but knows what's going on.
Yeah.
The other thing that I thought was really fascinating was one of the guys stood up and he's like, let's hear the song of Hawkbuzz. And they start singing this song about this great victory. And Calanthe looks at Geralt and says, that was my first battle. Right? Like, listen, I'm not just a smiling, pretty face that knows how to manipulate people. Like, I know how to command people in war too.
Yeah.
Right. Like that was my first win in battle. And to me, it was like, oh, okay, you have other wins in battle too. You're a good ruler. You know how to rule your kingdom. You know how to keep your people in line. You know how to win wars for your people. And it was just really interesting. Like, you were a good queen. You were the archetype of the good queen. That's who Calanthe is. And so it changed the entire light that I was looking at the conversation between Geralt and Calanthe.
And Geralt changes as well.
Once that happened, I was like, oh yeah, exactly. I think he picks up on it as well. He's like, okay, I'm going to shut my mouth and let's see what's happening here.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay. Calanthe has the best for her people in mind. And she wants to see what happens best for my people. And I'm going to play that route.
Yeah. And at that table, the queen, she doesn't have to, there's a lot that she is just kind of saying without saying, if that makes sense. And she uses these other men at the table who are supposed to be the leaders of these civilizations, pretty much, these other kingdoms. They're supposed to be these great men, and they're just acting like idiots. There's a guy literally making animal sounds at the end of the table who is supposed to be the most respected one from that group, and there's other guys like playing with their food, acting like babies the entire time. And like the way that the men are described, this is kind of like that girl power moment. And it's really cool because that's what I think humbles out Geralt. And that's when that conversation kind of flips. Because Geralt starts off by being kind of sarcastic, like, you're just like every other ruler. And then she just shows him by example, like, am I? And then he kind of looks around at the table like, oh God, like, you are so good.
So, and one of the things that she does mention is that when they're in their heated discussion, she talks about how she wants to rent his services. So she kind of changes her tune where she's not going to order him. She realizes that he has a code and he has a kind of thing that he follows. So she decides not to order him to do something, but she would rather rent his services. And she says that I just want the services that I want my Pravetta to marry the right person and to create an alliance with Skellige. And I thought that was interesting that she's not ordering him. She's saying, this is the outcome. And she describes it as like, orders need to be specific, yes. But I'm renting a service. I just want this outcome to be specific. I don't care how you do it. And I thought that was interesting that like this, and they mentioned it here, this little play of destiny of how she describes what she's looking for or what the price is going to be about or what the price is going to be over has changed right there on the spot.
Yeah.
And they mentioned destiny.
And she even says, one who renders a service sets his own price. So she's kind of nodding like, Geralt, I'll give you whatever you want. And she's kind of putting the ball in his court, which it's almost like she predicted that he would have this code, and she's kind of trumping that right now. She's putting the name your price. Like, what do you need? Yeah. What do you want? And it's yours. I'll make it happen.
I was amazed at how quickly Geralt, she pushes Geralt in a corner and says, yes or no? Are you going to do it or not? And Geralt's like, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And she's like, listen, there's a sword, like reach behind my throne and feel what's back there. And Geralt's like, oh, that's my sword. And she basically says,
gee, that's my sword.
Hey, I know what's going on. You know I know what's going on. Here's your chance. You can either say yes and name your price, or you can say no and I'm going to torture you. And Geralt's like, all right, I'll do it. And
I didn't get the feeling that she put up torture.
Yeah, she kind of just nods that she has the ability to ruin his life if she wanted to, but she's not. She's just kind of laying things out there that I am going to let you act as a Witcher would. I want you to be comfortable in doing the right thing. And he can't bash back to that. There's no witty comment you can make because she puts the ball right in his court. This is what Witchers do. And she kind of continuously says that almost in a sarcastically insulted way that, oh, do you think that I was assuming that you would just be a hired gun? Like, come on, Geralt, you're a monster hunter. I know that. And this is the point she finally reaches. She goes, because you're a monster hunter, I want you to name your price to take out the monster. And he can't argue with that logic because it's perfect. And this is the part where he makes eye contact with Mousak, who is out, I'm assuming, in this ballroom at a table, just dead staring at him like, check your phone, idiot. So he looks down and these symbols start appearing. So
when you text someone, hey, why are you texting me, Mousak? Right, like at the table with the queen, like, Mousak, why are you texting me?
Mousak is
like,
typing.
Right here, be quiet.
So he looks down at the table and these symbols start to appear and then words are coming up and Geralt looks over. They don't say what the words are, but Geralt looks at him and he nods and then Mousesack nods. So I'm like, are they texting right now? And then Geralt must have left Mousesack on red because...
And it was at this point that things started to get off the rails, as if they weren't already. So, like I said in the intro, we decided to continue our review of Chapter 4, A Question of Price, in our next episode. Episode 9 will be out shortly, as the us getting together, drinking, and recording us talking about the book part is already done. In the meantime, why not head over to the old Twitter and give your boys a follow, at Hearth Bound Pod. We're going to be starting epic Witcher gear giveaways once we finish the book, and we'll be asking our listeners which book or series we should start next. Until then, cheers, and see you in the next chapter of Hearth Bound.